Never did I imagine I would find myself cast as the villain in my own narrative, yet here we stand. Perhaps you'll come to despise me by the conclusion, yet I implore you to lend me your ear first. Those words escaped my lips. I found myself gazing into my husband's eyes as he battled cancer, and I uttered the words that it was all too much drama. My name is Vanessa, I am 32 years old, and I am about to share the story of how I unraveled my marriage at the most inopportune moment. Ryan and I crossed paths 5 years ago at a marketing agency where I was immersed in client relations. He toiled in the realm of creativity. Silence envelops the scene, a deep focus reflected in the gaze of those present. Honestly, not my typical preference. I usually gravitated towards the boisterous types who dominated the space, yet there was an undeniable allure in Kyle's calm demeanor that captivated me. He observed the subtle details, such as my coffee preferences and the moments I decide to alter my hairstyle. Just 3 months into our relationship, he orchestrated an entire weekend escape to a charming lakeside cabin, where he chose the enchanting moment of sunset to propose. Utterly enchanting, wouldn't you agree? 8 months later, we exchanged vows and became husband and wife. Nothing overly elaborate. We found ourselves in the midst of repaying student loans while simultaneously setting aside funds for a future home. Kyle's parents contributed to the down payment for our home in the suburbs. A modest starter home, yet it belonged to us. We lived a fulfilling life, didn't we? Lazy weekend barbecues, festive holiday gatherings with friends, and cozy Netflix marathons on the couch. Indeed, there were moments when I felt a twinge of irritation at Kyle's preference for staying in rather than venturing out. Yet, that's just the usual dynamics of a couple. Last spring, everything transformed. Ryan began to voice his grievances about his perpetual fatigue. Somehow feeling drained despite having rested through the night. He would often find himself adorned with peculiar bruises, seemingly appearing from thin air. I continued to assure him that it was likely just the pressure from that significant project. Perhaps you are starting to feel unwell. At that time, we found ourselves in our 30s, who considers cancer at such a young age? Moreover, Ryan always possessed this peculiar tendency to crave attention whenever he fell ill. Even with a mere cold, he would carry on as if it were the apocalypse. At long last, he sought the doctor's counsel, prompted by my growing weariness of his incessant worries. I recall feeling a twinge of annoyance as he chose to schedule it right in the midst of the lunch I had arranged with my college roommate visiting from out of town. Was it not possible to schedule it for next week? I inquired of him. The glance he cast my way ought to have served as my initial indication that all was not well, yet, it eluded me. Subsequently, additional appointments followed. Tests involving blood samples, referrals to specialists, additional blood tests, every single one disrupting our plans more than the previous. I began sharing with my friends the extent of Kyle's dramatic reactions to his fatigue. As I sipped my coffee with Jess, I remarked, he's always been a hypochondriac, while Ryan underwent yet another round of tests. Recall that moment when he believed he was suffering from appendicitis, only to discover it was merely gas? We shared a hearty laugh over it. Oh, how that fills me with a sense of discomfort now. The day chaos erupted, I held in my hands tickets to a concert I had longed to attend. Ryan reached out from the doctor's office, requesting my presence there. His voice had an unusual tremor, quivering with uncertainty. I expressed to him that this concert was something I simply could not afford to miss. We had possessed the tickets for months. I shall return home promptly, as I have vowed to do. Let us converse at that time. He fell silent, offering no resistance, before finally conceding with a simple, okay. His silence should have been a clear signal to me. Upon returning home, still electrified by the show, I discovered Ryan seated in the shadows of our living room. Before I had the chance to inquire about his actions, he simply stated it is leukemia. In an instant. 2 words that ought to have brought my universe to a standstill, but do you know what crossed my mind initially? Not, oh my goodness, my husband could be facing death. My initial reaction was that our upcoming trip to Hawaii next month was in jeopardy. How utterly twisted is that? I settled beside him, draped my arm around his shoulders, and spoke all the right words. We shall confront this challenge together, and I stand by your side. Yet, deep within, my thoughts were consumed by the potential derailment of our carefully laid plans, our very lives. The ensuing days unfolded in a haze of additional appointments and emotional conversations with family, the community united in support of Kyle. His parents arrived without delay. Care packages arrived from my mom. A group of friends organized a meal train. There I stood, nodding and smiling, embodying the role of the supportive wife, all the while harboring a quiet resentment as our life spiraled beyond my grasp. Relief washed over me when Kyle's parents extended their offer to assist with the medical bills. While insurance provided substantial coverage, it did not encompass all aspects. What I kept from Ryan was that I had spent a portion of that money on a designer bag I had been longing for endlessly. A small indulgence to lift my spirits, I reasoned. Ryan would encourage me to maintain an optimistic outlook. I concealed the receipt and informed him that the bag was discounted. The initial chemo appointment served as a stark awakening, or at least it ought to have been. Ryan was filled with fear, making an effort to conceal it, yet I could perceive it reflected in his eyes. I drove him to the destination, keeping him company for the initial hour, until the weight of an impending deadline at work tugged at my thoughts. "It appears you have found your place," I remarked to him. "I shall return to collect you." The expression of relief that washed over his face upon my return revealed his uncertainty about whether I would actually come back. That moment should have shattered my heart, yet what I felt instead was a simmering annoyance at his lack of faith in me. As Kyle's treatment schedule grew more demanding, my resentment deepened. I realize how that may come across, yet it's essential to grasp the context. In the blink of an eye, my existence transformed into a relentless cycle of medical visits, trips to the pharmacy, and the constant task of tending to Kyle's distressing episodes of nausea. Each plan I crafted appeared to be thrown off course by an unexpected medical emergency or a sudden alteration in appointments. I repeatedly reassured myself that I was managing the situation admirably, given the circumstances. "I'm utterly drained," I confided to Lauren during our brunch, the singular weekly reprieve I was unwilling to relinquish. Ryan underwent chemotherapy that morning, and I had made arrangements for his mother to accompany him. "You need to take care of yourself too," Lauren assured me, affirming my choice to maintain our regular date. "One cannot give what one does not possess." I held on to phrases such as those, tiny permits that allowed me to continue my existence while Kyle's life remained in suspension. In all honesty, I began to seek out excuses to distance myself from home. The scent of the medications lingered in the air, the hospital bed we arranged in our living room stood as a stark reminder, and the steady stream of worried visitors transformed our home into a place where I felt increasingly out of place. I eagerly embraced additional projects at work, became a member of a Thursday night wine club, and started practicing yoga on the weekends. "It's my escape," I would say to Kyle, "allowing me to be more resilient for you." He would nod, yet the spark in his eyes faded a bit more with each departure I made. One afternoon, Dr. Sharma, Kyle's oncologist, sought to discuss his treatment plan with us both. I had been eagerly anticipating this hair appointment for 3 weeks, and rescheduling it would mean it would fall after the wedding we had on the horizon. I said to Kyle, "Just jot down some notes for me, darling. We can discuss all the details this evening." As he called later, his voice laced with emotion over some new medication worries, I found myself only half listening while my stylist meticulously tended to my highlights. I reassured him, silently conveying the complexities of marital strife to my stylist reflected in the mirror. On a particular evening, Ryan attempted to engage me in conversation regarding a clinical trial that his doctor had brought up. I found myself engrossed in a show I had been devouring, my attention split as I nodded in half-hearted agreement. "Can we pause and rewind?" he finally asked, his voice heavy with tension. "I believe you're overlooking the aspect concerning the side effects." I paused the TV and snapped, "I'm listening. Must we embark on this endeavor at this very moment? The day has stretched on endlessly." "For whom?" he inquired softly. Only 2 words, yet they lingered in the air between us, heavy with the weight of an accusation. I responded, "For the sake of both of us." "You're not alone in your struggles, Kyle." His expression shifted then, taking on a rigidity I had never witnessed before. "Not at all? Share with me the depths of your anguish, Vanessa. Kindly share your insights on the experience of observing someone endure cancer in contrast to the reality of facing it oneself." In that moment, I uttered the words I can never reclaim. "Your cancer often feels like an overwhelming spectacle of turmoil. A respite from it is essential." Is that truly so misguided? As soon as the words escaped my lips, a profound realization washed over me. I had undeniably crossed a threshold. Ryan remained silent, neither raising his voice nor shedding a tear. He gazed at me as if he were finally perceiving my essence, and whatever revelation struck him compelled him to look away. That night, he took refuge in the guest room, and an essential change unfolded between us. I had revealed my true self to him, and there was no turning back from that moment. Approximately a week following our altercation, I observed a card resting on Kyle's nightstand. It was one of those commonplace cards, adorned with a serene nature scene on the cover, meant to convey a sense of connection. Within lay a note penned by hand. Please don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything you require. The treatment room feels rather empty in the absence of your infamous bad jokes, Harper. The name struck a familiar chord, a fleeting memory of a woman associated with Kyle's office. I was unaware that they were near enough to exchange get-well cards. Who is Harper? I inquired nonchalantly as Ryan took his evening medication. She is engaged in graphic design, he responded, avoiding my gaze. She has been reaching out consistently since the diagnosis. I nodded and set it aside, yet an unsettling feeling lingered regarding the card. I had encountered Kyle's colleagues at the outset. They offered blooms and made a brief appearance on 1 or 2 occasions. As the months slipped by, most had gradually faded into the background. Isn't that just the way things are? The mere mention of cancer often sends shivers down the spine, causing many to retreat in fear. Upon returning home from my wine club the following week, I discovered a homemade lasagna nestled in our fridge, accompanied by a note, extra garlic-free as promised. I hope it brings comfort on the tough days, H. I found myself gazing at the meticulously wrapped portions, each one adorned with its own reheating instructions. It had been weeks since I had prepared a proper meal for Kyle, relying instead on takeout and frozen dinners, interspersed with the occasional food drop from his mom. Sophie wrote that by, Ryan remarked from behind me, causing me to startle. He appeared dreadful, his complexion ashen, his frame gaunt, with shadows lurking beneath his eyes. Yet, there was an additional layer, a certain wariness that enveloped him whenever her name slipped from his lips. That was, with careful consideration, I succeeded. You two appear to be growing quite close, Ryan remarked with a casual shrug. She has been assisting me in managing work projects that I can tackle from the comfort of my home. Occasionally presents design mock-ups for my review. What does it mean for something to occur occasionally? The inquiry emerged with a precision I hadn't anticipated. I'm uncertain, Vanessa. Once every week? Is it of any significance? It ought not to have held any significance. It ought to have brought me solace that assistance arrived just when I was visibly faltering in my efforts to support him. Instead, it filled me with a tightness in my gut. The following day, I deliberately chose to work from home, a practice I seldom engaged in these days. At the stroke of noon, the doorbell chimed. There she stood, Harper, clutching a portfolio and a paper bag from that smoothie spot Ryan adored before his taste buds were altered by chemotherapy. She defied my expectations. I envisioned a youthful, playful intern, her intentions unmistakably clear. I found myself face to face with a woman of similar age, her sensible glasses perched on her nose and a practical bob framing her face. She was dressed in jeans and a cardigan, exuding an air of understated elegance. Entirely unremarkable, save for the gentle warmth of her smile, which wavered just a bit upon catching sight of me. Ah, you must be Vanessa. Greetings, I am Harper, representing Kyle's office. She adjusted the portfolio to reach out her hand. It is a pleasure to finally make your acquaintance. At last, one must ponder, for how long had this been unfolding? I offered a brief smile as I welcomed her in, guiding her toward the living room where Ryan was already positioned with his laptop. The moment his face lit up at the sight of her struck me like a blow to the stomach. You didn't mention you were working from home today, he remarked, though his gaze remained fixed on Sophie and the smoothie she was carefully unpacking. In a moment of spontaneity, I responded, my gaze fixed upon them intently. Their exchanges appeared at ease, as if rehearsed. She understood precisely how to position the portfolio, allowing him to view it effortlessly. He was aware of the location of his pill organizer as he noted that it was time for his medication. I slipped away to brew some coffee, eavesdropping on their conversation from the kitchen. Amidst their work-related discussions, a light-hearted laughter danced between the topics. When was the last occasion that Ryan shared a laugh with me? It eluded my memory. I attempted to engage in their dialogue, yet an unsettling sense of alienation enveloped me within the confines of my own abode. Sophie possessed a deeper understanding of Kyle's treatment than I did, inquiring about particular medications and referencing his doctor by name. I had been steering clear of those particulars, deeming them excessively bleak, too tangible. Sophie mentioned, almost nonchalantly, that Dr. Patel had rescheduled your PET scan for Thursday instead of Friday. I have added it to your shared calendar. A warm flush crept across my cheeks. I was completely unaware of the PET scan. I hadn't looked at our shared calendar in weeks. The following day, I resolved to personally accompany Ryan to his oncology appointment. In the waiting room, a nurse I had never encountered before welcomed him by name, then turned to me with a look of astonishment. "This is my wife," Ryan explained. A flicker in the nurse's gaze stirred a curiosity within me, prompting thoughts of what whispers might have reached her ears regarding my story. Within the confines of the treatment room, my gaze was drawn to a photograph affixed to the wall in the cubicle to which we were guided. Ryan and Harper, each offering a thumbs up, stand before a sign that proclaims halfway there. It stemmed from his milestone treatment weeks prior, a day I had overlooked due to a work emergency that, in hindsight, likely could have been postponed. 3 days later, I returned home early, resolute in my intention to prepare a lovely dinner, eager to demonstrate to Ryan that I could rise to the occasion. Instead, I stepped into what seemed like a carefully orchestrated trap. Ryan occupied a seat at our kitchen table alongside Sophie and an unfamiliar man clad in a dress shirt and tie. "Vanessa," Ryan exclaimed, his surprise evident as he laid eyes on me. "This is Rick, the social worker assigned to me at the cancer center." We were engaged in a conversation about various avenues for financial support. Support with finances? We found it unnecessary. Hold on, the funds from his parents, the very funds I had been using for my own needs. Had Ryan come to that realization? "It was a pleasure to make your acquaintance," I said, grasping Rick's hand firmly while deliberately steering clear of Harper's gaze, who was busy arranging a disheveled pile of papers. "We're almost finished," Ryan said, his tone unmistakably signaling that my presence was no longer required for this discussion. I withdrew to our bedroom, sensing a tempest brewing within me. Upon hearing the front door click shut half an hour later, I strode back to the kitchen, prepared for confrontation. Ryan remained at the table, his weariness evident, yet his determination unwavering. "What was that all about?" I insisted. "What was the reason for not informing me about this meeting? Would you have chosen to attend?" He responded with a rebuttal. "Would you have left work early for it? That seems unjust. I have arrived, haven't I?" Ryan let out a weary sigh. "Vanessa, I have discovered the receipts and the shopping bags. I am aware of how you've been handling my parents' finances." The ground appeared to vanish beneath my feet. It was not a significant amount. We still had an abundance for your treatments. It transcends mere quantity. For the first time since his diagnosis, Kyle's voice rose above the quiet. "While you were preoccupied with thoughts of handbags, I found myself contemplating whether I'd even make it to the next Christmas." Tears welled up in my eyes, a mix of humiliation and the undeniable sting of being discovered. "I apologize. Stress has been weighing heavily on me. I simply sought something to restore a sense of normalcy within me." Kyle's demeanor grew resolute. "I discovered something additional as well." He pushed his phone gently across the table's surface. Displayed on the screen was a dialogue exchanged between Lauren and me. "Unable to prepare dinner. Trapped once again in the cycle of escorting Ryan to yet another appointment, the saga of cancer unfolds like an interminable play, filled with twists and turns that seem to have no resolution. Rescue me. Kyle, I never intended." "Halt." His voice carried a quiet strength. "Cease the pretense. From the very first moment of this diagnosis, your attention has been elsewhere. You speak perfectly in the presence of others, yet when it's just the two of us, your gaze barely meets mine. The mere presence of cancer is unbearable for you." "That's not true," I protested, even though deep down, we both understood the reality of the situation. "My heart is yours." "This has truly been quite challenging." "For whom?" That question resurfaced, yet this time he refrained from awaiting my response. "Sophie makes the journey of an hour each way to accompany me to my appointments. She recalls the medications that induce nausea in me and the foods whose flavors still linger on my palate. She remains by my side throughout the entire treatments, never seeking an excuse to depart after just the initial hour." Every word landed with the force of a sharp blow. "She is not your wife." "I exist, then embody that essence." Kyle's voice rang out, only to be followed by a sudden fit of coughing as he doubled over. I moved closer, yet he raised a hand to halt my advance. As he regained his breath, his gaze met mine, filled with a profound disappointment that rendered me motionless. "I require a respite, Vanessa. From us, from this, feigning." "What do you mean by that?" My voice emerged, tiny and trembling with fear. "I will be residing with my parents for a period of time. I cannot battle cancer while simultaneously vying for your attention. I lack the fortitude for both endeavors." As his father arrived the following day, I stood by the doorway, observing them gather Kyle's medications, cozy attire, and the tablet that housed his treatment journal. It was an experience that felt almost dreamlike, as if I were witnessing the slow unraveling of my marriage before my very eyes. Ryan wrapped his arms around me for a fleeting moment, a hollow embrace that lingered in the air as he departed. I whispered, my heart full, I do love you. I understand, he responded, yet, at this moment, love alone does not suffice. I seek assistance. Genuine, effective, and unwavering assistance. The initial week devoid of Ryan unfolded as an odd blend of liberation and desolation. I lingered in slumber, indulged in my whims, and ordered takeout without a second thought to dietary constraints. Yet, by the third day, an unsettling silence enveloped the house. I found myself anticipating the sound of his shuffling footsteps or the clatter of pill bottles. After I had a breakdown during one of our weekly calls, my sister Olivia came over. She had consistently shown a raw honesty towards me, and this occasion was no exception. What were you anticipating? She inquired, casting her gaze over the mountain of takeout containers strewn across my kitchen. Based on the fragments you've shared, it seems you have become a mere specter in your own marriage since his diagnosis. That seems unjust. I raised my voice in dissent. You cannot fathom the depths of my experience. No, I don't, she conceded. Yet, I recall vividly that when Mark underwent his back surgery last year, I took family leave and spent 3 nights on a hospital cot. The comparison made me recoil. Cancer presents a unique challenge. Indeed, it has deteriorated. This indicates that Ryan required your presence more than ever, not less. As she began to clear the containers, a look of disappointment flickered across her face, directed at me. Pray tell, who is this Sophie individual, exactly? Just a woman from his office, I murmured. She has been offering her assistance to him. In what ways can I assist him? Transporting him to his various appointments, delivering meals to nourish him, and keeping track of every detail regarding his medications. With every admission, the weight grew heavier, each one more challenging than the one before. Olivia paused her cleaning, her gaze fixed intently on me. And where were you amidst all of this? I found myself unable to meet her gaze. I was present. About? In the general vicinity of your ailing husband, perhaps? Is that truly your defense? 2 weeks following Kyle's departure, I received a direct call from his oncologist. My heart came to a sudden halt. Did something occur? Mrs. Mitchell, I am reaching out to share that Dr. Patella's indicated significant improvement in Kyle's recent scans. The treatment plan is exceeding expectations. A wave of relief washed over me. What delightful news that is. When will he return home? A moment of stillness. You might want to bring that up with Kyle. I am reaching out to discuss some financial matters related to insurance that require your signature. That evening, I made my way to his parents' house, the good news serving as my pretext. Upon my arrival, I found Ryan ensconced in the sunroom, swathed in a blanket, engrossed in the contents of his tablet. His gaze lifted as I stepped inside, a look of astonishment flickering across his features. Vanessa, your arrival took me by surprise. Dr. Patella's made a call. He mentioned that your scans appear to be favorable. I stepped nearer, yearning to embrace him, yet acutely aware of the unseen divide that separated us. What wonderful news, Kyle. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. Indeed, the new treatment protocol is proving to be quite effective. Additionally, the side effects are milder. Upon glancing at the side table, I observed a collection of photographs. Ryan sat with his parents at what appeared to be a recent family dinner. Ryan surrounded by a gathering of colleagues from his workplace. Sophie stood beside him. Kyle, at an outdoor event I was completely unaware of, appeared pale yet wore a smile. Suddenly, I found myself saying, I've missed you. The house feels achingly vacant in your absence. His expression eased just a bit. There are elements of home that I have longed for as well. I observed that, not myself, dimensions of dwelling. 3 months slipped away. Ryan persisted in his journey of growth, transitioning from his parents' home to a modest apartment nearer to the cancer center. I followed his journey through our shared acquaintances and the digital realm, where I observed Sophie increasingly featured in photographs. Transcending the role of a caregiver, evolving into something greater. With her arm draped around his waist at the office party, they shared laughter, captured in a group photo from their hiking adventure. Ryan appears increasingly healthier and stronger with every new image that emerges. On a crisp evening in early fall, Ryan reached out, requesting a rendezvous at a coffee shop nestled in the heart of downtown. My heart pounded in my chest as I navigated the road, mentally preparing every word I longed to express. how I had transformed. I have come to understand now how we might embark on a new beginning. Upon my early arrival, I claimed a secluded table nestled in the corner. As Ryan stepped through the door, I could barely identify him. His hair had returned, now a deeper shade and more unruly in its curls than it had ever been. He had put on weight once more. His cheeks were flushed with color, and there was a vibrancy in his movements that I hadn't witnessed in more than a year. "You look amazing," I remarked as he took a seat, genuinely believing every word I spoke. "I feel good," he responded. "The most recent scans reveal no signs of disease. I am pleased to share that I am now in remission." A wave of joy and relief washed over me. "Kyle, that's truly remarkable. It brings me immense joy to hear such wonderful news about you. My sincere gratitude to you." He offered a smile, yet it failed to illuminate his eyes. "That is one of the reasons I wished to engage in conversation. As the treatment draws to a close, my mind has been occupied with thoughts of what lies ahead." "Returning home?" I inquired with a sense of optimism. Ryan inhaled deeply. "A promotion has come my way, as I've been appointed team lead for the creative department." He took a moment to pause. "Vanessa, I have decided to file for divorce." Time itself appeared to freeze. Although I had dreaded this result, the moment the words were uttered resonated in an unexpected way. "Is it due to Harper?" I inquired, my voice barely above a whisper. "No, due to our actions." He held my gaze with unwavering intensity. "In my hour of greatest need, your absence was palpable." "Not quite. I have transformed," I asserted. "The months that have passed have revealed much to me." "I believe you've changed," he remarked. "Yet, that does not diminish the events that transpired. What I discovered about us, about you, in the darkest moments of my existence. Are you really holding my imperfections against me in the midst of this crisis?" Ryan gave a slight shake of his head. "This is not a form of punishment. It is acknowledgement. We are not meant to be together. Perhaps we never truly were, yet cancer possesses an uncanny ability to peel back the layers of facade. Is Sophie truly the one for you?" The bitterness seeped into my voice, uncontainable. "Sophie Arivid," he stated matter-of-factly. Day after day, amidst the most unappealing surroundings, she made her presence known. Not out of obligation, but from a place of choice, he conveyed that he and Sophie had developed a deep bond throughout his treatment. Initially, it wasn't about romance, rather, it was a profound friendship blossoming from authentic concern and mutual experiences. Her mother had triumphed over breast cancer years prior, granting her insights into the journey that I could never fathom, or perhaps never sought to. Half a year had passed, and the divorce was officially concluded. As I cruised by our beloved old haunt one evening, I caught a glimpse through the window. There they were, Ryan and Harper, nestled together, his arm draped affectionately around her shoulders. They reveled in a moment of joy, champagne flutes glimmering on the table. Perhaps it pertains to his health. Their blossoming connection. The future I had once lost. That day lingers in my mind, the moment I told my husband that his cancer felt like too much drama. I have revisited it countless times, envisioning alternative words, varied choices. In my darkest hours, I remind myself that it wasn't my doing, that I was unprepared for the weight of being a cancer caregiver, that no one had equipped me for such a trial. Yet, in my most candid reflections, I acknowledge the reality. It wasn't that I was incapable of managing Kyle's cancer. I simply wouldn't. Time and again, I prioritized my own comfort over his needs. I spoke the correct words, yet I did not support them with deeds. There are moments when I find myself filled with resentment towards Sophie for embodying all that I could never achieve. On other occasions, I find myself thankful that someone stood by Ryan during his time of greatest need. On my finest days, I hold on to the hope that this journey has transformed me sufficiently so that if someone calls upon me once more, I will understand how to genuinely be present. Yet, on most days, I find myself yearning for the moment I could have grasped the true essence of loving someone in their bleakest times, before the opportunity slipped away from me.